I am the PERIFAX automated roving robot.
Hello chip dippers. Now while FamilyFractic takes a long overdue break travelling the globe in search of rare retro tech and TV treasures to share with all of you, call me Indiana Joysticks, we are switching to Retro Recipes co-op mode. Now I'll still be sharing regular updates on the Patreon as we travel around the world, but it is indeed those very same patrons that I'm passing the joystick to, and each week one of them will insert their disc into the Retro Recipes drive and share with you their own brand of retro magic inspired by retro recipes. I think it's a really great chance to spotlight some of those incredible channels out there, give them this platform and let them share what they can do with you. And this week it is the turn of
The Knight Rider Historians
and a very special project about
the computers of Knight Rider.
So please enjoy this week's Retro Recipes 2-Up takeover, and remember, be kind. No blowing in their cartridges to make them work harder. Alright, 2-Up, you're up.
Well, hello chip dippers, and welcome to Retro Recipes. I'm AJ, one of the Knight Rider Historians, and I'm honored to be your guest on the Retro Recipes channel today. Actually, I've been here before. You might remember me when PERIFAX and Ladyfractic were my guests with the original kit from Knight Rider a couple of years ago. And if you haven't seen that, shame on you. You can watch that right here. And today, we're going to talk about the computers of Knight Rider. That's right. We're going to talk about the actual real computers or computer terminals that appear in episodes of Knight Rider. Now, we're not going to talk about those great big panels of blinky lights that you see in Knight Rider. Those actually are props. And they're made to look like computers, but they really aren't. But rest assured that the Knight Rider Historians will absolutely do a whole series of videos on each and every one of those as time goes forward. But what we're going to focus on today are the appearances of actual real computers or computer terminals as they appear in all the episodes of Knight Rider. Now, we don't have time to go through all of them today, so we're just going to cover most of them, if not all of them, in the first season. So let's get started. Our journey begins with the first episode of Knight Rider, the pilot. No, it's not actually called Night of the Phoenix, but that's another story entirely. For that, you're going to have to watch an episode on our channel, the Knight Rider Historians, but it's called the pilot. Surprisingly, we really only see one computer in the first episode, in the pilot. And no, it isn't anything here from the moment that Michael first sees Kit in the Wilton Knight warehouse. There's some interesting stuff here. We'll have to get into those in a future episode. And it isn't actually a computer. It's actually a terminal, a computer terminal. Now, if you're not quite sure what the difference is between a computer terminal and an actual computer, don't worry, we'll cover that here in a little bit. But it's actually the Comtron computer that Tanya uses to steal Comtron's secrets before taking off in a jet before it explodes. That computer isn't actually a computer, it's a computer terminal or a video display terminal. And it is, drum roll please, the Delta Data Systems Model 5000 or Delta 5000. It took us a while to find this one. You might notice that the screen on the front doesn't look quite right. That's because the studio, most likely the special effects department, took the original CRT out of that terminal and put in their own video display so that they can control it. That way they could show what they wanted to on the screen, making it look more realistic. But they added that bezel there so it doesn't look quite right. And then we see Tanya take a disc out of a disk drive. That is for a completely different system and a completely different disc. That's actually a single floppy disk drive for a MITS Altair, and it's an 8-inch disk drive. And you might notice that Tanya pulls out a 5¼ floppy. It doesn't look quite right. She also pulls it out upside down, but who's nitpicking? Who's counting here, huh? Does it really matter? Of course it does. That's why we're here talking about it. Anyway, it's actually an 8-inch floppy drive unit for a MITS Altair. And it's a particularly unique one with the aluminum front door. Pretty hard to find, but they are still out there. So if you're one of those viewers lucky enough to have a MIT's Altair system and actually have one of the 8-inch floppy drives for it, you might just have an example of a computer or a computer peripheral actually used in Knight Rider. Now, how cool is that? Then next, in just about every first season episode where Kit enters the semi, we see this beauty. What is it? Well, it's the Entrex Datascope, of course. But what is the Entrex Datascope? Well, it's not a computer, and it's arguably not necessarily a terminal. Technically, it's a key station. And it's a key station for a host system called the Entrex 480, this monstrosity, which actually is part of a bigger system which is about the size of an American refrigerator. What was its purpose? The Entrex 480 system was designed to replace the need for punch cards. Back in the 60s and in the early 70s, data was entered into your mainframe computer with a bunch of people in a room sitting at IBM 029 key punches, actually punching cards. And if you've ever seen this done, it's a little bit of an arduous process where the person entering the data really can't see what they're typing. They can see a little bit of what's printed on the card if they're paying attention, but if they make a mistake, they have to throw the card away and start over again. And if they make a mistake and don't catch it, well, then they're just entering bad data. And so this was developed as what's called a key-to-disk system. And we're not going to get too deep into this because we don't have the time. But basically, the keyboard of this particular key station or terminal, depending on what you want to call it, is designed just like the IBM 029 key punch. It was also available in a more standard typewriter arranged keyboard, like this. And so we actually have examples of this particular key station or terminal with each keyboard configuration. But the Entrex 480 system was actually built on a host computer from the late 60s, early 70s called the Data General Nova. And it's this big box you see right here with this front panel. And these blinky lights, even though the way I have them blinking isn't real, these blinky lights are actually a real computer when it's working properly. Right now I have this front panel on what I call a tester. Just kind of a thing that makes the lower level of lights blink. But there's a lower level of lights and an upper level of lights, and we're still building a tester and light blinker for that, but we'll get to that in a minute. Uh-oh, you know where this is going to go. Because you know where we get these from, right? This is a PCB. And speaking of PCBs, PERIFAX, I believe you have something to tell us. That's right, AJ. We always get our PCBs from PCBWaaaayyy, where you can get great PCBs starting at just $5. Because we all know that PCB stands for Perfect Computer for Bonnie. Right, Pandafractic? That's what I thought. Back to you, AJ. Thanks, Perry. Now you might be saying to yourself about the Entrex Datascope, hang on a minute, it's not red. Why is it not red? Well, this is actually the color that Entrex made them in. And we have none other than set designer R. Lynn Smart, most likely, to thank for choosing to paint this red to match the color scheme of the interior of the first season semi. That's just our theory. But under no circumstances were these ever manufactured to be red. Now, something else is really interesting about how the crew of Knight Rider actually used this thing. They were not nice to it. They took the keyboard out and they glued the keyboard to the bottom here. And then they cut a hole in the back and they inserted a Sony PV studio monitor. Probably a lot like, if not identical, to the very same monitors that you see sitting on the PERIFAX Retro Recipes coffee table during almost every single The Retro Show. That's right. They would have cut a hole in here, and you can see that that's actually much longer than this. so they had to cut a hole in the back, and you can actually see that in one of the episodes where you see the back of this thing. Now, we usually see the red-painted Entrex datascope in the background of most scenes on the first season semi-set. However, it was featured more prominently in 3 episodes. Inside Out, where we see the rap sheet for Colonel Kincaid, but we see this on what clearly is a TV monitor, most likely a Trinitron PVM series that may not yet be installed inside the datascope case. Then, at the beginning of the final verdict, Bonnie and Devin use the Entrex datascope, the red-painted Entrex datascope, of course, with the now clearly inserted Trinitron PVM studio monitor to give Kit a brand new feature to construct a composite drawing on his screen based on a verbal description. And we see this glorious rendering of the Hoff inside, right behind the plexiglass, on that glorious Trinitron PVM series monitor. This one, since we had to get it from Germany, does have some of the words on the keys replaced with the German equivalent of the English word or abbreviation. So, but it's as close as we can come, and, when you travel around the world to find vintage computer relics, you just might be a Knight Rider historian. You just might be. And finally, in Hearts of Stone, where we see the new sellers of the Non-X19 featuring Jack Gill, but this time they've decided to no longer use the glorious inserted Trinitron PVM monitor, but they went instead for superimposing a still image here over the plexiglass. But this is probably the scene from which this machine was most easily identified, because we can clearly see the name badge in the lower left-hand corner that says Entrex Datascope. A name badge that you would notice is conspicuously absent on this one, because by the time this one was produced, it was produced by Nixdorf in Germany, and it was Nixdorf that was putting their badges on them, removing almost every sign of the word Entrex, which is too bad. But then early in the first season, in the episode Deadly Maneuvers, we get our first glimpse at some other computers, or terminals, that have turned out to be complete unobtainium. We see this fantastic scene here where Robin Ladd and Michael Knight are hanging out in this data center, this real computer room. Now you notice that they're on this side of the glass and the real computer room's on the other side of the glass. We don't actually know where this computer room is. We know that a lot of this episode was filmed at College of the Canyons. But on the side of the glass that they're on, we actually see this. And it took us a long time to figure out exactly what this is. But this is a Genesis 1 G77, again, computer terminal. And in real life, believe it or not, it actually is designed to connect to those big computers behind the glass in that big computer room, which is a real computer center, a real data center. Those are real IBM machines. That looks like a real professional IBM shop. And maybe that's why they're not quite allowed to be on that side of it. If anybody knows where that data center is, I'd love to know that as well. So be sure to let us know in the comments. Or email us at knightriderhistorians@gmail.com. This was actually designed as a less expensive lease or buy option for the IBM 3270 series, and in particular, a direct replacement for the IBM 3277. Supposedly, it functioned just the same way, with a few extra features. But the Genesis 1 G77 in present day seems to be unobtainium. So if you've ever seen one in real life, even in a museum, please let us know. We'd love to know if one of these actually survives. And likewise, those tape transports we see next there, those are also real machines, also made by the same company, Genesis 1. Those are called the MAI 2403 tape transport. And then there's this mysterious device. When Lieutenant Robin Ladd discovers that the count for the tactical nuclear missiles is off, she rips a piece of paper computer printout right off the top of this thing. But we've researched this and we can't quite figure out what it is. In function, it's resembling what the IBM 1052 did, which is a teleprinter. We can't quite figure out what that is, so if you know, please let us know. We actually show even more computers we find in this episode in the extended version of this video. But for now, we have to move on. Next, we do briefly see a very special computer in the final verdict, but we're gonna skip over that one and come back to it a little bit later because I want to talk about the Topaz connection. At the very beginning of the episode, we see Philip Royce in his office throwing a party at the mansion for Escape. By the way, we know exactly where that mansion is. We talk about it in our filming locations on the Knight Rider Historians official channel. But after Philip gets a phone call from his ex-wife, very distressed, he mysteriously disappears out the balcony, and we're left to see this. And this is a majestic scene because it's a real IBM 3277, kind of. But that is not a real IBM 3277 keyboard. No, they mismatched the keyboard, and instead they put in one we talked about earlier, the Genesis 1 G77 terminal keyboard, which is kind of interesting because the G77 was designed to be a direct replacement for the IBM 3277. So it's kind of like they knew they were related, or maybe it's just coincidence, I don't know. But in this case, throughout the Topaz connection, when we see the IBM 3277, that machine, just like the Entrex datascope, has had the CRT gutted, and instead, what probably is a Sony Trinitron PVM style monitor has been put in. If you compare to other real 3277's historical photographs, you can see the difference in the size of the CRT, and it's really quite obvious. When Michael and Lauren are in the suite in Vegas, there's another computer there, or a computer terminal. The question Michael asks Lauren is that thing hooked up to the one in LA? And sure enough, it is another Genesis 1 G77 terminal with its correct keyboard. So they're really playing with those two in the episode The Topaz Connection. Very, very interesting. I don't know what the background story is behind that, but there's yet another computer in the Topaz Connection that is worth mentioning. It's in the background just for a moment, but here it is. And yes, we find this in the Topaz Connection. Very briefly, in Philip Royce's office, when Lauren is first meeting with Michael, she walks over to a very distinct looking machine. And what is it? Well, it's none other than the IBM Display Writer, of course. Ah yes, the IBM Display Writer, first released in 1980. That's right, it's the IBM 6580 Display Writer. Man, these numbers IBM uses. And as we study closely, it's not just one IBM Display Writer, but two. And a matching printer. And over there on the far end of the desk, we even see what appears to be the IBM 5218 print wheel printer. Man, these numbers IBM uses. And we even see in one of those scenes that one of them is actually on and operating. And that's not superimposed, that's not fake. That machine is really running. And in this particular case, those machines are operable and booted up. And leaning against one of those display writers is an Easter egg for all of us who love the 1982 and 1983 Trans Am. Did you see it? Did you catch it? And that is none other than Firebird girl Natalie Carroll and David Copperfield. Okay, not David Copperfield. But this Easter egg runs deep because in this particular episode, Natalie Carroll shows up not only in this ad, but she shows up not once, but twice more in this episode right here in front of the Escape Mansion. And then again at the end of the episode as the centerfold, Natalie Carroll, Firebird girl.
Please remove the staple from my fender.
Very good, Escape. We're glad that you like to advertise the Trans Am. For better or worse, unfortunately, all we're able to show you here today with the Knight Rider Historians and Forgotten Machines is the toaster drive. The IBM 6360 model toaster drive that went with the IBM Display Writers. Why did they call it a toaster drive? And when these are in the up position, you just put your bread here in the top and you slide it down into position and the bread goes down in and toasts, right? No. And that brings us to Whitebird, where we see one of these. Now, it's long been believed that this computer that we see in Whitebird has been the Intertec Superbrain. However, it's always bothered me that when we see the display of William Donner on the screen, to the right of it, there aren't these slots for floppy drives. And the Intertec Superbrain has these slots for floppy drives. We see this distinctive vertical ribbed pattern, that's there, but no slots for floppy drives. So years ago, I went on a hunt to try to find an Intertec Superbrain that didn't have slots for floppy drives. And I found it. The problem is, it wasn't a Superbrain, but it was made by Intertec. And here it is, the Intertec Intertube. Not to be confused with Intertube, no, it's the Intertube, I-N-T-E-R-T-U-B-E. Now, they're both made by Intertec. The difference is, the Superbrain is actually a full-fledged computer with dual floppy drives. You can see them right here, and they look like this. But the Intertec Intertube doesn't have slots for floppy drives because it isn't a computer. Once again, it's a video display terminal. A dumb terminal, if you will. It's a device that needs to be connected to a host system to display characters on the screen, which is what's happening here. We share a ton more interesting things about the Intertube in the extended version. Check it out. But then there's another computer that snuck its way into Whitebird. Did you see it? Well, if you did and you know your computers, you probably know exactly what it is. It's the IBM 5150, the very first IBM personal computer from 1981. And this is how we see it, just like this, from the back side. Bonnie's sitting at it in Devin's office, and Devin says,
Bonnie, I think we've got something here.
Look at this! And that's not as flattering for the presentation of the machine, let's face it. However, we can actually know more about how their IBM 5150 was equipped by seeing it from the back side than we could as if we saw it from the front side. There's some very interesting distinctions from the back side. First of all, we can see how early of a model it is because of this. We see that it's the original IBM 5150 connected to a monochrome 5151 monitor and the companion IBM 5152 graphics printer. And in the scene, we actually see it printing. And I wonder if that sound of the dot matrix printer we hear actually is this printer in action. Guess whose name keeps popping up on the winning side? Anthony Solon. In the extended version of this video, we do a deep dive about the specific differences between this and most other early IBM 5150 models, so be certain that you check that out. But now, I think it's time for our final set of computers that we see in the first season of Knight Rider. What are they? And what episode is it? Nobody does it better. Delton Micronics. That's right. When private investigator Flannery Rowe helps herself to Julian's beach house, she walks in and she sees not one, but two machines. Both of which, once again, are terminals, not computers, but close enough for this video. And here they are. The Teletype 43 and the Heathkit H19, both data terminals. And the Heathkit H19 is a build-it-yourself data terminal. Now, the one we see on Julian's desk actually has another apparatus with tractor bars. We just got a glimpse, just in the corner of this right here, and we can just see the colors of the H19. The shape is very, very distinctive when you know it. Those beautiful orange, yellow, and blue colors that we see right here in the corner. And in another scene, when Connie Chasen helped herself into Julian's beach house and answers Julian's phone to say, "Julian, where are you?" We could see just in the corner the Teletype logo right here on that beautiful keyboard. But wait! When Flannery Rowe first helps herself to Julian's beach house and she has a look around, the first thing she sees isn't actually this. Oh no. No, something happened. And the first thing that she actually sees is this. What is it? Well, it's certainly not this. This is the Olympia SGE40 electric typewriter from 1965. It's an electric typewriter. It's definitely not a computer terminal of any kind. And they used it as if it was this. When you look at the paper that they actually put in the typewriter, it does look like the same paper that came out of the Teletype 43 with dot matrix printing, and this is a dot matrix printer style terminal. Notice the tractor bars that are inside the typewriter? Yeah, that doesn't belong there. This actually has tractor bars to handle paper just like that. So I call this Julian's magic transforming typewriter. And then later when Julian sneaks into his office and is distracted and distraught by the fact that there's a company-wide party going on right about then, we get a chance to see Julian's desk. And just in the corner of the screen, we see this. And we can actually see very clearly not only the very distinctive design logo right here, but we can see the H19 very clearly when you look closely. No question about what model it is. But just seeing this gorgeous H19 terminal in Julian's beach house and in Julian's office isn't quite enough. No, we see it a third time in the episode when Bonnie calls Julian's boss, Elliot Stevens, and says, "You don't know me, but the night Connie Chasen was killed, she gave me a briefcase." And when you see Elliot Stevens on the phone with her, on his desk, you see this. No, not like this, not from the front, but like this from the back. Just like you see it on Elliot Stevens' desk. Where we can see this back corner right here, just like this. And then finally, the elephant in the room, or the tabletop Pac-Man game. Even though it's not a computer, I'm including it anyway, just because it's so much fun. And besides, this is Retro Recipes, so how can I not include a video game? At the end of the episode, Julian gives Michael, Devin, and Bonnie, mostly Devin, a tabletop Pac-Man game. Because we all know that these are made by Delton Micronics and not by Midway, right? And we even hear the actual sound that this game makes as Devin attempts to play it. Be careful, Devin. Don't get hooked. Never. We do actually see more video games in this particular episode, particularly at Delton Micronics than this tabletop version, but because large video game consoles are not my thing, we're just gonna have to look to another YouTuber to cover those. Sorry. Well, that about wraps it up for this video, and we finally completed Season 1. But now you know more than you ever wanted to know about the computers of Knight Rider. Thanks for watching. I'm so glad you joined me for this journey today. We've actually produced an extended version of this video where we talk more about each and every one of these machines on our channel, the Knight Rider Historians Official. Just follow this link and it'll take you right there. Also, our new channel, Forgotten Machines, is where you're going to see us do a deep dive, break down and reverse engineer and restore each and every one of these machines. And you're going to see exactly how we got the awesome Retro Recipes logo on each and every one of them. And of course, a very special thank you to PERIFAX and Ladyfractic and Retro Recipes for allowing me to be a guest on this channel today. Till next time, take care, everybody.
One man can make a difference, Perry. Or one woman. Or dog. The Fractics, lone curators in a vintage world. The world of retro recipes.